Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Durejo from Creamer Media. Welcome to today's webinar on health and safety, where our panel of industry experts will unpack how to enhance collaboration to prevent workplace injuries and promote a culture of safety. Today's webinar is sponsored by Rand Mutual Assurance, Saryx Engineering Group, and AlcoSafe. We thank them for their support in making this event possible. Before we get started, please be aware that we've enabled the Q&A function, so please post any questions into the Q&A section. You'll find this on the panel at the bottom of your screen. The panelists will answer as many of your questions as possible throughout the discussion. Additionally, the chat feature is enabled for your comments and insights. Look for it right next to the Q&A. Remember though, questions should go into the Q&A and not in the chat box, as we may miss them. Post all your questions into the Q&A. Please also be informed that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available to you afterwards. Also, we're broadcasting live on YouTube. The link will be shared in the chat once it becomes accessible. So today's webinar will be facilitated by Dr. Sanjay Munnoo, the President and a fellow chartered member of the South African Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. He's also the chairperson for various committees, as well as the Chief Business Development Officer at the Federated Employers Mutual Assurance Company, or FEM. Dr. Munnoo will facilitate the discussion with our panel, which consists of Dr. Jessica Hutchings, the Head of Social Insurance at Rand Mutual Assurance, Ingrid Osborne, the co-founder and CEO of Saryx Engineering Group, Daniel Weber, the SHE Risk and Compliance Specialist at Saryx Engineering, and Dushen Naidoo, Head of Safety and Sustainable Development at Minerals Council South Africa. I'll hand over now to our facilitator, Dr. Sanjay Munnoo, to start the proceedings. Over to you, Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Shannon, and a very good afternoon to the attendees online. Thank you to Creamer Media for hosting this webinar. To our panelists as well, enhancing collaboration, preventing workplace injuries, and promoting culture of safety are all interconnected goals that contribute to a healthier, more productive work environment. Dr. Jessica Hutchings, how can companies move beyond only a focus on compliance to create a proactive, safety-first culture that genuinely prioritizes workers' well-being? And how does RMA's prevention program help to achieve this outcome?
Good afternoon, Sanjay, and good afternoon to all the viewers. So certainly it's important that we go beyond compliance. I think sometimes organizations just see compliance as the minimum, and it is the minimum requirements. So we often advocate that companies go beyond compliance and look at best practices and other interventions. And compliance and moving towards a proactive safety culture is very much dependent on leadership and how it's inculcated within an organization. If you don't have the managing directors or the CEOs leading from the front, you can have the most perfect and amazing systems in place, but the implementation thereof is really difficult. So for me, it's also about making sure that from a proactive and predictive way that we look at more leading indicators around prevention and health and safety as opposed to lagging indicators, and being better equipped at making sure that safety is a KPI for everyone. It's discussed at an exco level. It's led by the board. So it really starts at the top for me. Rand Mutual Assurance is, for those that don't know, we do workmen's compensation for the metals and mining sector. And just an interesting stat, across from the Department of Employment and Labour, from 2019 to 2024, over 20 billion was paid out in workmen's compensation. And that's certainly money that could have been better put into the fiscus to actually invest in much needed healthcare and systems in our country. So we launched the prevention program in 2022, and the objective of our prevention program is to ensure that our metals and mining companies are better equipped at understanding what are their legal responsibilities, but also how do we inculcate best practice. So things such as bringing in wellness programs. It's not just about health and safety. You can have a perfectly sound and safe workplace, but how we as individuals present at work or how the company in terms of culture impacts on how valued we feel may also impact on accidents and incidents focusing on industrial theatre as a different way of communicating health and safety. So for me, just to sum up, it's really important that health and safety and wellness, and we call it prevention, is led from the front. It's at the forefront of everything that a company should be doing. At the end of the day, the employees are the most important assets. Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica. So I think in terms of what you mentioned, from a leading indicator to lagging indicator, and certainly leadership of an organization has a pivotal role to play in terms of driving health and safety, to inculcate the culture within the organization. So from your perspective, behavior-based safety does make a huge impact in terms of influencing employees in the workplace. So what is your view in terms of influencing the worker?
So for me, Sanjay, as I say, it's really about leading from the front. So it's really important that organizations, things such as, legal liability, do the executives know when they are appointed as a 16.1 or 16.2 what that actually means. It doesn't mean that you're just delegating responsibility. Doesn't absolve you from your accountability. So I think that's one thing that's really needed in terms of educating senior management right up to supervisors. In terms of behavior-based safety, sometimes I'm a fan, sometimes I'm not, because if it's not implemented appropriately, it still has a punitive culture around looking at the reason why we have incidents from an employee behavior perspective. But if done properly, it's about, ensuring that there's visible felt leadership when things are reported, that they are attended to and fixed, and employees get the feedback. If a machine doesn't have guarding on it and you've lost three fingers to one person and you're prepared to continue with that level of risk, what message are you giving to your employees? And this is a real life example. It's not something I'm just thumb sucking. And that's what we find in industry. We found a machine with no guarding. It was accepted by the management team. So yeah, behavior-based safety, if done appropriately and correctly without it being punitive, has a big role to play, especially in South Africa.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Ingrid, to you. So we recently observed, in April, World Day for Safety and Health at Work, where artificial intelligence and digital technologies are transforming occupational safety and health. How best can digital tools and automation be leveraged to strengthen occupational health and safety monitoring, especially in high-risk sectors like mining and construction? So you think you're on mute, Ingrid?
Thanks, Sanjay. The impact of digital tools and automation on occupational health and safety monitoring is probably as transformative as the revolution brought about by online banking back in the day. So just as I think digital banking shifted financial control into the hands of every individual, enabling real-time access and instant transactions and enhanced security are doing the same. And yeah, that's what a platform like Age Second Line would do. It really revolutionizes compliance and safety management in high-risk sectors, such as mining and construction, but in most other sectors as well. When you think about digitization, it's simply the bridge between safety policy and safety culture. So when you have a platform like HSEC Online, you're not only simplifying compliance, but you transform it into a culture of accountability, visibility, and continuous improvement. And by embedding digital solutions into the very DNA of your organization, you are not just checking boxes. You're building a workplace where safety is lived and not just learned. And so when you look at, the outcomes of when these tools have been leveraged, digital solutions simply provide real-time visibility into compliance status. It automates your safety critical workflows. It ensures seamless contractor onboarding and verification. And through automated alerts, digitized documentation, and intelligent tracking of qualifications and expiries, of course, the system probably empowers organizations to be preemptively manage risk rather than reacting to incidents as they occur. So the digital shift not only improves safety outcomes, but it really dramatically reduces administrative overload. It improves audit readiness, and it really supports a culture accountability and continuous improvement, much like how online banking enabled smarter, faster financial decisions for millions of individuals. So in short, digital online health and safety tools are placing control and visibility directly into the hands of every single person on site, just as online banking did for everyday customers. And this really creates a safer, it creates more awareness, and a more efficient workspace. And it's powered by real-time intelligence, which is really important.
Thank you. Ingrid, so I think, when we talk about health and safety files, everything seems to be very paper-driven. And what would your advice be to an organization that's just beginning their journey towards a stronger safety culture?
I think that digitization is the way to go. Honestly, it's and we saw real practical examples of that recently. Dan is on the call, and I'll explain this by actually sharing a real life story, which I think every single person in the audience can relate to. And last week he visited a potential client, and upon arrival walked straight into a crisis. The business owner was full of panic mode. His entire team had just been pulled off a client site due to one simple oversight, an expired document or a perceived expired document. The financial impact was immediate. Not only was the current day's work lost, but they also faced an additional day of downtime due to scheduling and having to complete the necessary training before being back allowed on site. At roughly, call it 15,000 a day, not much for a small, for a large business, quite a bit for a big business. That single compliance failure cost the business around 30,000 Rand in instant lost revenue because of one small preventable error. So now you compare that to a cost of a fully digitized system like HSEC Online, which for a small company is about 600 Rand per month. And this provides automated document management, real-time alerts, and proactive compliance monitoring. It completely eliminates this human error. So it's an easy decision. And in this case, it was. The business owner signed up immediately. For him, it was a no-brainer. The same applies when it comes to audits. And companies don't generally think about this. Companies using digital occupational health and safety platforms like HSEC Online are always audit ready. Audit files are live and continuously updated. The days of scrambling for documents weeks before an audit, frantically trying to close outstanding items are gone. Now, real-time safety management happens in real time. When something requires attention, you're automatically notified. The actions are taken immediately. And this just ensures 100% compliance. And the benefits extend even further into an unfortunate event of an incident, an accident, or even a fatality. When investigators arrive on site requesting records, training records, contractor files, employee certifications, equipment documentation, employee contracts, contractors' contracts, everything is instantly acceptable, fully up to date and inspection ready. It's a true game changer. And I really, really encourage organizations from large, medium to and small to digitize their safety files.
Great, thank you. So we're going to shift to Dushen from the Minerals Council of South Africa. Dushen, despite the significant progress having been made in the mine health and safety, South Africa's mining industry continues to experience fatalities and injuries. What is the Mineral Council doing to support its members to align with South Africa's launch strategy from 2024 to 2029?
Thank you very much, Sanjay, and greetings to everyone on the call. So as a Minerals Council, one of our primary strategic objectives is around enabling and supporting the industry towards reaching the goal of zero harm. So we've been driving numerous initiatives over the past years, and we continue to do so. And these initiatives revolve around health and safety aspects to address the primary agencies and others. And we've been rigorously involved with the operations, with the mining companies, to try and get these initiatives practicalized and implemented on sites. So essentially, it would be remiss of me not to mention the statistics. We have 30 fatalities in the industry to date as of this year versus 19 last year during the same time. So there has been a 58% regression. There's been our key initiative that we've initiated since around 2019 was the Kumbhalakaya strategy. And Kumbhalakaya speaks to remembering home and ensuring that every worker returns home safely. And in that year, we did see some impact through the strategy being initiated. That was the first version of Kumbhalakaya. And then thereafter in 2022, there was a point where we got all our CEOs together, and as to embody CEOship, there was a stop the bleeding, the 8 stop the bleeding actions that also helped in reducing the number of incidents. So with the ongoing regression, I need to explain that, you know, we've actually evolved Kumbhalakaya to a new version. And to do that, we've done a very, very comprehensive analysis of the past 10 years of incidents in the industry. Through that process, we've looked at different aspects through the SAMRAS codes, over 7,000 to 14,000 data points, to look at all of those areas where and why and how these incidents occurs. You know, where the root causes, the direct causes, the contributing factors. It was very, very elaborate. We also generated a detailed safety report. And I'm not going to go into all of that detail, but the bottom line is we use those insights to formulate tangible aspects that led to the development of Kumbhalakaya version 2. Now, Kumbhalakaya version 2 strategy is really a transformational safety and health strategy. We've launched it this year. It was a few months ago, and our Minerals Council board approved it. And this has been, it also went through the CEO Zero Harm Forum, which is also a key committee for safety and health. So it's been approved by the board. And essentially, this strategy, it has tangible action. So it's not just conceptual aspects of safety. It's really tangible things centered around core pillars that we are driving this year. So I can give you an example. We've got the first pillar being the CEO-led safety and health commitment. So Dr. Hutchings, Jessica actually spoke about this earlier, VFLs. We are looking at cross-company VFLs. Many companies are doing these VFLs. However, how effective are they? So as a Minerals Council, we've generated guidance information to ensure that VFLs are done effectively. And out of interest, we're actually launching and doing our first cross-company VFL next week at one of our mines. So that will have CEOs from different companies getting involved in the VFL and sharing on lessons learned. The next step in that in the strategy is risk management through critical controls. So we believe that critical control management is a key aspect of trying to mitigate specific areas around incidents and reducing the incidents in the industry. So there's a lot of work we've done on critical control management, and it's the implementation that is key, so that the workforce right up to the senior personnel understand what the terminology actually means. There's a lot of different terminology around this at the moment. The next pillar speaks to data 4. So we're leveraging a lot around data and how control failures actually occur, leaning a lot on HPIs and leading indicators. So we're formulating a data package to obtain this information from mines. We've already over the years we did do some safety involved data acquisition or data retrieval from our mining companies, and we've established a lot of lessons learned through that process. Just to quickly also round up, we're also doing a lot on human-centric mental health, looking at fatigue management and risk reporting cultures and fatigue management. That's how shift times can be optimized for workers, because that's also a key driver behind safety incidents. aside from the behavioral aspects and control failures. We're also looking at safety and health-driven innovation and MOSH leading practices. So MOSH is an inherent part of our safety team. That's the Mining Occupational Safety and Health Department that focuses on fall of grounds, transport and machinery, noise and dust, the focal areas being those, and the leading practices thereof. So there's a lot of initiatives that we're running at the moment, and this is a key year for us to drive the strategy, and we've got an implementation plan also set out for that. So I'll leave it at there, Sanjay, unless there's other comments or questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dushen. So I just want to find out, so in terms of what you mentioned, there were 19 fatalities this year compared to, 30 fatalities this year versus 19 for the same period. Are there any particular reasons for that? Is it probably an increase in productivity? And then what is your view in terms of zero harm or zero accidents? Is it possible?
I believe, and a lot of our leaders do believe, that zero harm is possible. We've seen companies that achieved fatality-free shifts over 5-year periods, and they are companies that have had significant and good safety performance records with millions of fatality-free shifts. So there's been numerous sites that have achieved it. So we believe across the industry this is possible. In terms of some of the causal factors, so what we've seen is there's been particular months where safety incidents have increased. And our milestone analysis told us that October is generally quite a difficult month for, over the past 10 years, that's been the highest month, that's been the month with the highest number of incidents. And some of the reasoning behind that is towards the latter part of the year, companies are driving production towards the last quarter. And as a result, that could be a causal factor. But there's many variances and many different reasons behind these incidents. And if you looked at the Brady report as well, there's a theory of cyclical performance where we have good years and bad years. I mean, 2024, we saw 42 fatalities, at the end of the year, which was the lowest ever recorded number. And over 20 years, we had an 80% reduction in the number of fatalities. That was from 2003 to 2023. So we've had overall, on average, a 2% reduction year on year. So we still have a very, very long way to go in terms of the industry stats. And then there's also other aspects that contribute to the numbers on an annual basis. You'd see that it may be just a few mining operations where many incidents occur, and then also in terms of catastrophic incidents, like as per the ICMM data, a long time ago there was the whole tailings dams disaster that resulted in over 200 people or so losing their lives. So there are things like these, incidents like these, and the fact that there's certain companies as well that are still trying to get their operations to a level where safety incidents can be reduced. And also, we've seen also the organizational drift phenomenon, where companies tend to steer away from the standard practices and the safety standards. So there's miscellaneous reasons for poor performance. We do envisage that there could potentially be a turnaround. We've done a whole analysis on the different months for the past 5 years. And although we've been trajectorying down for the first 5 months, there has been a slight upward trend. Generally, the last 6 months of the year do tend to have fewer incidents, but only time will tell, and the effectiveness of the interventions will also give us some insights.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dushen. So I think, certainly there's a lot of synergies I could see, not just with the mining industry, but perhaps to share best practice with other industries. We look at definitely the compliance levels are quite or relatively low. And certainly when you talk about other aspects, when it comes to, the human-centric aspects of mental health as well. So how do we then, look into partnering and maybe looking at advocacy sessions for not just mining, but with other industries as well. Daniel, from your side, So how are mining companies adapting their operations to meet the evolving legal requirements under legislation, and where are the most common compliance gaps occurring?
Thanks, Sanjay. So, firstly, we need to look at where most or these most common compliance gaps may be occurring at the mines and how they can adapt to address these challenges. So there are obviously a myriad complex or compliance challenges faced by mines. This can be due to the number of people on site. You have permanent employees as well as contractors, the size of the mines, as well as the complexity of the operations. Some of the common compliance gaps that we'd see: the inadequate risk assessment process, poor incident reporting, poor contractor management, inadequate supervision and accountability, poor health surveillance, inadequate training and competency, and actual lack of understanding of the legal requirements, as well as inadequate updating of those requirements. So not really being able to understand what is required from a compliance perspective and a legal perspective. You can see there's also poor record keeping and documentation. Environmental compliance is always an issue as well. So you need to try and think, how are mines going to address this? And not, we don't even have to look at mines in all industries. These are all common gaps that we see. And I think the key ways in this can be done is through modernization. This includes the integration of technology, the implementation of management systems like the ISO systems, health and wellness programs, as well as training and competency programs and development programs. I think at the core of these interventions, because it kind of ties everything together, is the use of technology. And in particular, the use of digital platforms, real-time monitoring systems, as well as automated and remotely operated machinery is especially important in the mining industry. I think we all know one of the key aims or core things of health and safety is to prevent harm. And the use of technology assists this dramatically. For me, a core ingredient to this is the use of online digital platforms, just like HSEC Online, which Ingrid mentioned earlier, and which we obviously champion. This can be used to address all of those compliance gaps that we mentioned above. Platforms such as this can assist mining companies, as well as contractors for that matter, to streamline their compliance and to also assist personnel to better manage the large administrative burden that's placed on them. I think everyone knows when it comes to compliance with even the OSH Act, it's quite an administrative, there's a large administrative burden and a lot of paperwork that needs to be done and a lot of boxes that need to be ticked. The digital platforms such as HSEC Online, I tend to refer to it as the saying that we all know, the housekeeping saying, a place for everything and everything in its place, because everything goes into one place. So although I can't speak about all the benefits that digital platforms have, I think if we look at contractor management, that is one of the major risks that's faced by mining companies, mainly due to the number of contractors they have on site. Often the contractors are involved in dangerous work, and these are personnel that are not under the direct control of the mining company. Their level of commitment to safety may not be the same as the mining company. It is also very difficult to ensure that they are compliant. And we mentioned it earlier, the usual method of using manual safety files. Anyone who has worked with a manual safety file can attest to how inefficient that process is. And once you've worked on a digital file or worked on a digital system that digitizes those files, you'll see how much better it is in terms of streamlining the process and making life a lot easier. So some of the ways that this improves it as well is faster onboarding, more efficient onboarding. I think we've got quite a few examples with HSEC Online where we've had a particular client that went from onboarding, it took 3 months when there was a shutdown, down to 2 weeks, which is a huge help to them as well as to the contractors as well. The systems also provide centralized and real-time access to documentation. Like I said, a place for everything and everything in its place. So being able to access everything in one place makes a huge difference to having 30 safety files, for example, lying around your office and having to go through those safety files. A few years ago, I was doing a safety file for a particular client and got hold of the the site that they were going to be working on, and I asked the safety officer there if everything was in order, and she said, well, I have to get through 200 safety files in this week, so I'll let you know if everything's in order if I get to it. And that is a huge safety issue. The fact that one person had that burden to have to go through those files creates a huge safety risk. There's no ways they can get through those things properly. So digitizing and digitalization, it reduces that administrative burden. And it's not only from that perspective, it also reduces bottlenecks where it takes long to get onto site. That has financial implications as well. Part of this burden, I think Ingrid mentioned it earlier, is the expiry date of documents, which is a big one. We saw it last week when I went to a client, and it's something that I picked up in audits over the years where expiry dates are not adequately tracked. And that's because the administrative burden is so high. With this system being able to take that away from you, it really helps. And then bringing it all together, I think the main thing is, in terms of legal compliance, is the systems allow for real-time compliance monitoring. The legal requirements are automatically embedded into these systems. It removes that burden placed on contractors and the mine as well, in terms of identifying these compliance gaps. We use an example of competency. We all know that for a forklift operator, there has to be a certain competency. They need to have a forklift operator's card, and the systems have that embedded in there. So you don't have to think as a contractor or as a mine what requirements are missing, because the systems have these embedded into them. So, from a legal perspective, it assists, and that's why I'm saying, from a digital perspective, digital platforms brings everything together: incident reporting, legal compliance as well, getting your legal registers digitized, having from those registers being able to get updates onto legal changes, as well as how those may impact your operations. I think when I first started many years ago, I used to go and collect the government gazettes and have to read them to see what changes were happening in the law to advise our clients. So digitization, I think, is incredibly important in adapting to the ever-changing legal compliance requirements.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. So you made some valid points there, and certainly what we wouldn't want to see is the sort of health and safety compliance becoming a tick box exercise, which we hear far too often, and complying for the sake of complying. And Ingrid, I would assume that when you introduce these new systems, there would be some level of resistance. How do you handle resistance to the safety initiatives, the digital transformation, and the changes in protocol, not just from a management perspective, but from the employees as well? Are there any guidelines that you can provide to us?
Was that directed, Ingrid? Yeah.
So yeah, I think that most companies are crying out for this kind of solution. I think that there is a real understanding that the current solutions that are employed across many sites, a lot of them still very manual, are just time consuming, frustrating, and there is a misalignment generally between contractor and site or mine. And I think once the understanding is, can I upload the requirements that the mine has requested before coming to site? How long will these documents take to be approved? Will I be able to see or identify any gaps that I have not met? And suddenly the playing fields are leveled. So in other words, this is my set of requirements that I need from you. I have now delivered them. And these don't have to be static. These can be amended over time, but they're amended in conjunction with the contractor. It will flag that we have added a new requirement. You've got 5 days to comply, or can you comply immediately? So I think that there is resistance. There's generally resistance to an additional expense on the contractor's behalf, and perhaps the digitization journey. But I think there are a lot of companies that actually sit in a room with us going, this is a game changer for us. It's changed our lives. Don't worry about it, guys. Get on board. You will never look back. And I think when you have systems Age second line doesn't allow you to share one-on-one with a client. I can share with the 5 clients from different companies in the same area. So if I actually just upload one standard document to a client for approval, it navigates to all the clients that require it once. So I'm now the system and the intelligence within the system has taken over that burden. And I think once you understand and educate in terms of this is pretty easy to use, it's going to save you time and money, and it's going to make sure that there is no frustration on your level, because there is a deep frustration, I think, on a lot of contractors who are trying to get onto site, trying desperately to comply and failing to do so. This closes that gap completely. And you can actually read your real-time compliance as throughout the year. You'll get a notification 3 months in advance that something's coming up. Plan for it, upload it, and you're back to 100%. And so these things expire at different times over the year. So it's not a mad rush for a single file within a single week, which I think is it makes real sense to us. So I don't think it's a lack of will, or I just think there's a lack of understanding of how powerful this can be. I don't know anyone that said, I wish I could go back to, walking into a branch and doing banking in person. And I've never heard anyone say that. I think everyone has adopted internet banking pretty well.
Yeah, thanks. So Ingrid, I think in terms of the user, so basically from a SMME perspective, what sort of user challenges are prevalent, and what do you do to sort of change the sort of perception about complicated systems, etc.?
So I think this is a problem, and it is a problem especially in South Africa. SMMEs, the first thing you can do is make it affordable. So that's step one. The second thing you can do is actually make sure that the training is adequate. If you get those 2 wrongs, there is going to be no adoption. But the third thing is actually, something that we're going to discuss, is there are a lot of applications which are messaging platforms that have almost become a new app layer. And I think if we discuss trends going forward into the digital health and safety solution, one of those trends is mobile solutions. And messaging platforms are actually becoming the new app layer. So there's no longer a need to download an app. Everyone's using a messaging platform or a WhatsApp platform, every single person. They know how to use it. There's no need for training. There's an understanding about the communications layer between these, between 2 entities. It's already familiar. It's trusted. And this is a great way to do safety compliance. It really eliminates that user, I have to download and use my data. There is data occasionally, but it's low bandwidth areas where WhatsApp is specifically successful. So it's really good for occasional tasks like onboarding. It's really good for compliance checks, for training confirmations. It's really good for sending documents, issuing alerts, capturing responses, and completing surveys directly in WhatsApp. It's really, really reduced the cost and complexity of navigating complicated applications. And this is where a lot of your health and safety applications are going. For age second line, it connects to the back-end systems, and this can trigger automated workflows, making WhatsApp part of your transactional business tool. So I think I don't have all the answers, and we work with clients to try and resolve their specific issues. But I think there are digital tools that can speak to this, and we can actually make it, make it user-friendly, make it specific to the task at hand. Normally, these people, these SMMEs, have low numbers of staff on site. They are not the big construction companies where a lot of your incidents and accidents can evolve from, just from the sheer numbers. So I think we can deal on a one-by-one basis, but there are technology tools out there that are actually dealing with this kind of need. There's a thought here that mobile apps are for administrators, but WhatsApp is for the field workforce and contractors, which I love. I think we can do things smartly. I think we can figure out how to do this so that everyone wins.
Great. Thanks, Ingrid. Jessica, so from RMA's perspective, what are the most common gaps you see in companies' current OHS practices, and how can these gaps be addressed systematically?
Well, I think, just following on from Ingrid, one of the gaps is the lack of any form of digitalization, right? And you've also got to look at the SMMEs. I mean, if we look at our metals database, 91% of the companies have less than 50 employees. So you're dealing with, really, really small companies that are battling just to keep the lights on and putting diesel in their generator to overcome load shedding. That any, investment in health and safety is it's not wanted. It's just they can't get there. They're just trying to keep business going and the employees employed. So, it's a challenge we face as a country, bringing in technology and digitization to definitely reduce the administrative burden. But I think also, some of the companies, we were at a company yesterday and they don't even have a printer. They don't have a computer. They don't have connectivity. So, I think one of the challenges we need to overcome is how do we bring in this when the companies don't have the basic of technology. But to your question, Sanjay, I think we still see that there is a long way just in terms of basic health and safety compliance. We find that incorrect use of PPE, and I know we all know the hierarchy of control, but for me, it's very seldom you see engineering controls being put into place. Everyone goes to the bottom of the triangle. So yeah, PPE is still the issue, or the incorrect use of PPE, people not being trained on why they need to use PPE, a lack of engineering controls around, as I mentioned in my example earlier, machine guarding, rotating pieces of equipment, presses without any, switches. The other thing is, I guess, as we were talking about SOPs, risk assessments, there's a real need also in terms of health and safety professionals being better equipped with what their responsibilities are, what the legislation says. I think it's often either not inculcated or misunderstood in cases. And then, gaps in terms of training. We find not even the most basic of training is in place. So it really is, I guess, concerning in a way that we've got pockets of excellence, but I firmly believe that as a country, life is cheap in South Africa. So if something happens, you're replaced, and we move on. I think one of the questions coming up later is, in terms of accountability, what happens to companies that are deemed to be unsafe, and do we ever hear at the end what happens? So for me, there are gaps, but I think also not necessarily to harp on the gaps. We have got companies that are doing things really well, and it's to leverage on those companies that are doing well to be advocates and examples for the rest of industry. I think we're very much siloed in what we do, and I think to Dashendra's point about cross-functional visible felt leadership, I mean, we've just started what we're calling an engineering exchange program, taking engineers, GMR2s, to other companies to help look at how do they improve, and then taking those engineers to the companies that need assistance. So I think there's a need for us to work as a collective to close those gaps.
Thanks, Jessica. Dushen, so I think it's a question maybe. So from your perspective, which do you think is more effective, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or is it the Mine Health and Safety Act?
Both are, but we work according to the Mine Health and Safety Act. I know there's a lot of discrepancies between, which is adopted, but of course the Mine Health and Safety Act is what we work towards, and we also acknowledge the requirements of the OHS, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, due to the miscellaneous adoptions through our member companies. So there's different perspectives on it. Essentially, from a mine health and safety perspective, I think companies need to constantly drive the interventions that they are using. There's a lot of lessons between mining operations, and sometimes those lessons are not shared. But what's very encouraging in the industry is the sharing initiatives that we've created for the industry. So one is the board hour of learning that's really promoting sharing. Before, in the past, companies were afraid to share certain aspects of incidents due to the legal implications and concerns around the reputational damage. But now we have very, very courageous sharing in those hours of learning on a monthly basis through the board and also through the CEO Zero Harm Forum. So essentially, yeah, in terms of the acts, both the Mine Health and Safety Act and the Occupational Safety Act are both well appreciated in the industry, especially in terms of contractors and permanent employees. There's different nuances behind the two, and we've acknowledged ourselves in both.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dushen, for that honesty. So given the legal obligations under the Mine Health and Safety Act, how can mining companies go beyond the minimum compliance to build sustainable risk-aware safety culture?
Yeah, I think, thank you for that, Sanjay. I think the key thing is for us to continue with a lot of the initiatives within the companies, and to also, institute and realize the effectiveness of control management. I think control management is really a key thing, but there's also, we're taking a very, very holistic risk-based approach to how safety and health should, the good performance should be sustained from those operations that are doing it, and also those operations that are lagging. So essentially, we have a holistic risk-based approach in terms of our version 2 of Kumbalakaya. The tangible actions I spoke to are what we need to continuously drive through the industry. And there's a lot of channels that we're working through with our members and other mining companies. There's the Safety and Modernization team at the Minerals Council is really a think tank. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of knowledge over the years, and there's a lot we also draw from the ICMM as from the international communities. So we've also promoted a lot of that work, and we've contributed to that work. And it's very encouraging when you see mining operations actually adopt those leading practices. Sometimes there are areas where leading practices are not, the one company might have, operations that are just neighbors to each other, but they're not talking to each other. So that's something we're also working on, enhancing the communication between operations. Simple things like slips and, not simple, but things like slips and falls, where, the causal factors are quite well known. If you adopt certain leading practices, you can actually mitigate. So there's things like that we're trying to promote, and we're also trying to promote just the unity, amongst the industry in terms of sharing. And I think that's really been stimulated over the past few years. There's a lot of good news stories. There's a lot of learning from successes, and that's the heart of Kumbalakaya as well, that we're trying to drive. So there's a lot happening. The one thing is talking about safety, and the other is tangible aspects of safety that we're actually implementing. And there's a lot of case stories that we can share, and that's already on our websites that we're trying to promote. So I think the way to sustain sustain efforts is just for the industry to keep on collaborating, in health and safety, and keep on driving stimulus to prevent that organizational drift aspect that results in incidents. And we've seen that. And I think our CEOs have really, really taken this to heart. We did have literally a heartfelt conversation last year, and everyone was very entrenched in ensuring that we do our utmost to protect every single life. We receive these statistics on a weekly basis, and each one of these numbers are people. And I think that's where the passion lies, along the safety leads from member companies to continuously drive interventions that can help prevent these incidents. As a Minerals Council, we've also built risk bow ties for the industry. These risk bow ties speak to all of the different controls for the key agencies that cause these incidents, being fall of ground, transport and machinery, and the general category of incidents. So there's a lot that we're trying to drive in getting this robustly and proactively sorted out. And we do envisage that if companies keep on the stance of, really proactively monitoring the leading indicators, then we can see the precursors to incidents and mitigate.
Thanks, Dushen. Back to you, Daniel. So how can companies balance the need for innovation in safety systems with the practical challenges of ensuring legal compliance and employee buy-in?
Thanks, Sanjay. I think this also talks to what you're chatting to Ingrid about earlier, but obviously innovation in safety systems is incredibly important. And it's imperative these days for the success of companies. And I've been speaking about digitization, which is one of these innovations. But I think there are definitely challenges that companies face. Just speaking from a legal perspective, involve experts from the outset. Companies should get experts before they implement a new system or some new innovation. Make sure that what is coming in is going to be legal, pass legal muster. I think it's very important with a lot of the technological changes and innovations that happen results in the use of a lot of personal information and data. And we all know with Poppy being around for a few years now, it is something that needs to be considered. And a very good way to do this comes from the global, the General Data Protection Regulations, or GDPR, which requires privacy by design. So when implementing a new system or a new innovation, make sure that privacy is at the forefront to try and protect or make sure that the personal information is kept safe. And with that goes implementing robust security and procedures and controls as well. But I think more importantly is the employee buy-in. I think what Ingrid was saying earlier, there are definite issues when it comes to employee buy-in when new innovations or new systems are put into place or new types of technologies. There's a fear of being replaced, that your job is in danger. I think that is a story that goes around everywhere, that I think we see it quite often, where they say these are jobs that aren't going to be around in the next 10 years. So there's a fear of being replaced, that this new technology is coming in and it's actually there to replace me. There's also a reluctance to change. And both of these together can result in improper use of technology or a lack of use, or even a bit of distrust that people actually don't want to use it. I think there's many companies, as I think Ingrid said as well, that are still using manual systems, heavily reliant on manual systems. And that is because there is that fear. But I came across a very nice saying, saying that companies are learning quite quickly that technological innovation without social innovation fails. And that's such a great way to put it together, because employee buy-in is so important. And ways in which to do that, clear communication and the purpose of the innovation that is coming in, or the technology that you're implementing. Make sure you communicate it clearly to your employees. Use real-life examples. Use an example of that particular technology, how it managed to save another company financially, save them in time, how it prevented or reduced incidents that are occurring. Use those examples to get people to understand how well these things are working. Get the unions involved. If unions are part of your industry, they are the voice of the worker, and the workers have trust in them. If they can say, pass it down and say, well, this technology is actually really going to be helpful, that builds credibility as well. And ensure that employees are also involved from the outset. Don't try and implement something or force something without getting their involvement. Get them involved, get them to understand the system and how these things work. I said to someone the other day, when this type of conversation was happening, and I was referring specifically to HSEC Online, saying, how digitizing things makes everything so much quicker, so it frees you up to do your actual job. And I said to them, well, it actually frees you up to go play more golf. Which kind of worked for them. Training is always important when implementing new systems to get buy-in. If people understand what the technology is that is coming in, and they understand how it's going to help them, and that it's going to make things easier, that is incredibly helpful. I think a lot of people are afraid of getting a new system that's put in place where they may not be technologically savvy, and they now need to try and understand it. But handheld training, use hands-on training sessions, offer incentives or reward programs to different departments. I've seen this done not from an innovation perspective and from technology, but just from a culture perspective in the automotive industry, where different departments would compete and they'd have boards in the factory. And this created this drive for people to try and be better. And you do this as well when it comes to the use of technology and innovation as well. And I think right at the top of this is and integrating all of this into a broader safety culture. I think Jessica said it right at the beginning, leadership is incredibly important. Things need to come from the top down. And I've seen this firsthand many times. In the same company where there are different managers at different sites, you could go to the one site where the manager is intimately involved, knows everyone's name, and is involved with all aspects of safety. I've told people about this site before many times, where it was a food factory, and you could actually, it was so clean and so well run, you could eat off the floor. Within that same group, there were sites that you'd go to where managers wouldn't even arrive for your meetings, closing meetings of an audit. They wouldn't arrive, and there's a malaise in those places. So, and their compliance was always worse. So I think leadership is very important. Walk the walk as well. Encourage continuous feedback loops as well with your workers. Get the employees to see that you believe in something, whatever type of innovation it is, and they'll follow suit as well.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. So I think, you made an important point there, and, in terms of how to promote it within an organization. So Jessica, I think in terms of what are the most effective strategies you've seen for breaking down silos between departments to improve safety outcomes? What would work in your opinion?
I think, Sanjay, it's, honesty and transparency. At the end of the day, everyone wants a healthy and safe workplace. I mean, I don't think people have an immoral way of looking at it. And I've often said this before, people don't come to work to kill themselves. So for me, to break down the silos and the barriers is to start off and say, right, what's working, what's not working, but not to harp on what hasn't worked, to actually go and look at what has been working. Because I think we go to the negative, and probably about 90% of the time things are working. Otherwise, imagine how many more injuries and stats we would be collecting. So it's about, having those honest conversations, those courageous conversations, not wearing a management hat when you're talking down to employees, but actually immersing yourselves into their day-to-day experiences. Instead of pointing, why you're not doing this or do this like this, then actually physically go and spend some time actually doing the work that they have, experience their challenges, go to the bathrooms that look disgusting and are not even friendly for any humane person, but yet, you expect your employees to work there. So for me, it's people really need to act as a collective. And unless you do that and have those honest conversations, removing titles, immersing yourself in the work environment and the challenges that employees experience, I think that's the only way to win this battle of overcoming, our horrendous safety stats that we have in the country and the harm that is being done to employees.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and to the panelists. So we'll move to one or two questions from the audience. And we could start off with the first one from John Davis. So he says long-term injuries such as noise-induced hearing loss and lung illness from silica particle inhalation are often seen to be overlooked in certain sectors. So construction workers are often seen working without the appropriate protection. And how can we avoid the post-retirement consequences of this practice? So any of the panelists would like to answer this question?
Sanjay, I'm sure this one was directed at you from the construction industry, but I think it aligns quite a lot with the metals as well, and mining. I'm sure Descendra as well has views, but the thing with occupational diseases is that they are latent and they develop over time. So an injury is immediate. You see it, you feel it, you do something. Whereas when you're exposed to these kind of occupational hazards, we don't really know until later on. And often that may be too late once a person's retired, or later on in terms of then attributing it back to where it started. And I think for me, the emphasis on medical surveillance program and occupational hygiene programs are paramount in terms of being proactive when it comes to the management of occupational diseases. I think we focus very much on injury prevention and not the disease prevention, which, from a cost perspective, when you claim for an occupational disease is far greater, which could have been reduced had we had better occupational hygiene measurements, surveys, and then a medical surveillance program that actually addresses the risks. And again, risk management is essential. So unfortunately, from a post-retirement, it is very difficult, but let's encourage organizations to be proactive, predictive, do your occupational hygiene surveys, link it to your medical surveillance program. Don't see them as separate, and ensure that you bring it back then to your risk management processes and fix the hazards that are there. So, yeah.
And I think, Sanjay, if I could just add one digital aspect of that, is that keeping records.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a huge problem with, as these events occur 50 to 60 years later, all those manual safety files have either been lost or misplaced, and these records cannot be found. It is essential that we keep the records so we can actually start to see these trends before they retire and again after they retire.
Great, thank you, Ingrid. So there's a question from Ibai Kosasa. So he says, I think there is lacking in mandatory recommended training for directors or leadership as a whole in safety culture. There is no legal requirement or investors or any enforcement. Is there any director leadership training on safety culture in SA? Because without this, I believe we can expect the leadership to know consistently what is expected out of them.
I think, Sanjay, sorry, Daniel, it talks to the point earlier about, leading from the front. Before you sign that 16.1 or 16.2, are you even aware of what your responsibilities and accountabilities are? It's not that it then becomes your supervisor's problem. It's actually your problem. So for me, it's making sure that you lead from the front, be aware and informed of what your responsibilities are. With the RMA prevention program, one of the biggest things I advocate from an intervention is that every single EXCO member and senior manager has to go through legal liability training before we even implement any solutions, so that they're on board and know what the responsibilities are and why. For example, SHE-reps need to do this, why supervisors need to have this in place. But yeah, Dan, I'm sure you've got something else to add as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Before we go to Daniel, yeah, so I mean, some of the larger construction companies, I know they have a program where every single CEO or director of a subcontractor has to go through an induction program, and they get issued with a credit card, sort of certificate to say that they've, passed this induction. And I think that's quite key, right? So we have many subcontractors or smaller SMMEs where the owners are not really focused on health and safety. Their main sort of purpose is to ensure that the company's, operating, making profitability and generating revenues, etc. So I think it's something quite key to learn from from how some of the larger entities are doing it. But we'll go to you now, Daniel.
Yeah, I think I just want to add to that I think it would be, from a legislative point of view, if the legislators made it mandatory that 16.1 or 16.2, and that they have to understand what their liabilities are. And legal liability training, unfortunately, comes in many forms, and you often don't know whether the training is sufficient. There should be a set standard and a set level of training that is required for owners or directors of companies or the 16.2s. It's very difficult because, I mean, I've been doing this for many years and been to many big or fairly large companies who have no idea. That they've never done legal liability training. They have no idea what their actual roles or their responsibilities are in terms of being a 16.2. And they don't understand, like Jessica said, to understand why a SHE-rep needs to be trained and why a SHE-rep needs to do particular things. They don't know. And they've never been forced to. There's been no mandatory requirement. So I'm glad to hear, Sanjay, that there are the larger construction companies that are enforcing it. Companies should enforce it, but you know, it's often the smaller companies where there is this lack where the injuries happen, or worse injuries happen because there is a complete, there's a lack of understanding of the legal requirements. And I think part of that is there hasn't been, in terms of enforcement, I don't want to sound too harsh here, but there's been no example set that I can remember where a 16.2 has been properly held to account, unless it's in the law report somewhere. But in my 15 years of doing this and going to some sites that should have been shut down, those guys are still operating, and you know they're not doing anything about it.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. There's a question from Ronald. How do digital safety tools foster transparency when it comes to incident investigations by health and safety representatives and HSE committees? And are they able to flag deviations from the OSH Act of 1993? So maybe we can hand that to you, Ingrid.
Absolutely, and I'll be very quick in answering this. You know, fostering transparency in investigations is easy. Centralized real-time data access, full audit trail and version control. These are the things that you need. I see there was one question say, can documents be doctored? No, because the person submitting the document and the person approving the document have different roles. This one can't change this one's work. So all those are brought into the solution. Evidence management, I mean, collaborative workflows. These all, you know, work towards fostering transparency. And then flagging deviations from OHS Act of 1995, you have to have automatic compliance tracking. You have to have exception reporting, corrective action tracking, and compliance checklists. These systems do that inherently within a digital system platform, and it can be done. It really is something to look into if you're really worried about it. It really enables organizations to take corrective actions proactively and reduce any legal and operational risk that they might face, you know, with all the things that I've just mentioned.
Thanks, Ingrid. Dushen, maybe a question for you from Peter Lewis. For the mining industry, the Mineral Council says that silicosis and TB is a thing of the past. However, there is still no independent, internationally reputable and technological up-to-date dust management measurement systems in the mines. With the public results available in the tripartite structures such as this exist under the, with the public results available in the tripartite structures such as exist under the Mine Health and Safety Act. I'm not sure if you can answer this, Dushen.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thanks, Peter. I'm not sure this is it's not really my area, in terms of the health and the health side. That's really handled by our Dr. Tutula Belfour. So yeah, it's a little bit out of scope for me, but I can of course relay that question back to her department and get that information. What I do know is on the health side, we do collect information from a data platform called Health Source. So that's directly from our members, and that's where our health colleagues digest and analyze the data. So but what I'll do is I'll relay that question back to my colleagues in the health department.
Thank you, Dushen. Okay, there's a question from Tabi Singh. I'd like to add one thing that I learned last year was that incidents go up during spring because of the allergies which might affect hearing, or hay fever, which affects your hearing, to it's something to look into as well. So do you think that this is a cause of incidence? Maybe for the panel to answer.
I'm not going to respond on the cause. I think it's an interesting comment and worth, looking into. My sort of take on that is generally, and I know Sandra said that the incidents go down towards the end of the year, but sometimes in the industries with the increase in production before the year-end shutdown, that there's often an increase or spike in incidents as companies push for production. So yeah, it's just an interesting, I guess, maybe Dushen can comment on that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, no, what I was saying was, I think the last 6 months of the year, usually we have less incidents in the first 6 months, but towards the end of the year, the last quarter, I did mention that, things do tend to get quite bad, especially in terms of our stats and the information we've done analysis on. October is one of the worst months towards when, companies try to push production, and then we get incidents. So certainly, yeah, towards the end of the year, I would agree that, things do go pear-shaped, but I'm hoping we get a good turnaround this year. We'll see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, but quite an interesting comment. So something for us to look into as well when measuring these stats. So Jessica, there's a question for you. With the RMA prevention program, are you seeing tangible results in reduction of incidents? And two, is there a particular area where significant changes are observed?
So Sanjay, on that question, and I'm glad the viewer asked it, because certainly everyone that joins the RMA program is on the program for 3 years, and it's part of our offering to our clients and our members at no cost for them to join the program. And what we've done is we are asked to measure the incident rate at the start of the program and at the end of the 3 years. And what we've seen in the first cohort that is finishing this year, that started in 2022, there's been a 29% reduction in the incident rate as a result of being in the program. And that's just through various, initiatives, the help, the support, the, expertise that we bring, the extra pair of hands and eyes. And then to the second part of that question about site-specific, for example, some of our clients, Atlantis Foundries, they had a 50% decrease in their disabling injury frequency rate. Scania's had a 27% decrease in IODs. And another company, a 37% decrease in IODs. So certainly there have been benefits in terms of not only the lagging indicators that I've just mentioned here, but also in terms of leadership, taking responsibility, ensuring that safety is now, being led by themselves, ensuring that safety is not something that's done on the wayside. Line takes responsibility. It's not just the safety people that are responsible. So there's a lot of more tangible and then also your non-tangible impact that the program has made.
Thank you, Jessica. There's a question, how does WhatsApp work with HSEC online, and what do I need to do to activate this function? So either for you, Daniel, or for Ingrid.
No, not a problem. I think that that requires a support answer and a little bit of a longer answer in terms of additional modules and training. So if you contact support at hseconline.com, we can address your question there. No problem. HSEC Online is very modular, so you can actually buy additional modules and plug them into the core operating functionality of HSEC Online and build your product as you go.
Okay, thank you.
Or you could use the WhatsApp support line that is currently available.
Okay, thanks, Ingrid. So there's a question here from Emmanuel. Hi, Daniel. I recently conducted research on constraints to effective, safe declarations in mining. While digital technology was recommended to improve compliance, many respondents highlighted that production pressure driven by unrealistic targets is a major barrier, especially in underground environments where it's difficult for miners to exercise their rights to refuse unsafe work. How can we ensure that even with digital tools, miners are supported to prioritize their health and safety?
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one to answer there because there may be various tools that you could look at. I think something, especially when referring to where miners they find it difficult to exercise their right to refuse unsafe work. I think that's something that we see across many industries. Like Jessica said, unfortunately, labor is cheap or in this country, and so if people try and assert their right for unsafe work, they just get replaced by someone else, and they have that fear. There's a fear factor there. So I think part of it is leadership, making sure that from the top down, this type of that all employees have the right to refuse their unsafe work, and you could, from a digital perspective, you could implement anonymous sort of whistleblower technology that someone could go in and write an anonymous complaint instead of having a suggestion box where people can see you putting something specifically in a suggestion box and you don't know whether that's actually going to get through to the correct person. So I think there are various types or various tools that you could try and use. I think that the first thing is having leadership that supports this. And then looking at digital tools such as implementing a digital anonymous whistleblower instead of being a phone call, or you could use WhatsApp, I guess, but you could use digital tools for that. I think Ingrid and Dushen can further elaborate.
Okay, great. Dushen, from your side?
Thank you, Sanjay. I think Daniel has really raised some good points there and completely agree. So essentially, there has been those concerns around, the right to execute the Section 23 to stop work. And a lot of companies a lot has changed in terms of leadership, really looking at people stopping unsafe work, making sure that you don't go into unsafe areas. In fact, recently there were those sort of interventions after recent incidents where the CEOs have actually called upon a few days or a day of safety where all the personnel are acknowledged on their rights and being aware of the risks involved in certain activities. I think that's really being promoted through a culture of care in the industry. So that is being promoted. And then in terms of digital devices and technologies, what we've seen through the Fall of Ground Action Plan, I know there's another question on Kumbalakaya and what it entails. That's a very long answer to that. But just in terms of this question and a little to that on Kumbalakaya, we're running a Fall of Ground Action Plan. And the whole aim of this multi-year program is to entrench some of the outcomes through learning with safety experts on fall of ground mitigation. This is rock engineering experts who have gotten together, and we've been part of that process. We basically facilitate the program with the rock engineers. We've developed an app called the Honeycomb app that speaks to an enabling environment to prevent fall of ground incidents. So that's a typical app that supervisors and mining personnel leaders can use. And they are using it quite proficiently. A lot of the industry companies or members are using it. It's freely available to companies. They can just register and use it. And it's making an impact. It gives you a spider web of tools to ensure that certain criteria are met to enable an environment that's conducive to mining, to prevent fall of grounds. So that's a typical technology that came out of us as the Minerals Council. Thank you.
Thanks, Dushen. Ingrid, from your side?
Just to go back to that original question, when I read that, it was my understanding was that digital platforms had been refused because of operational constraints and the huge pressures that were placed, on that level, which is incredibly disappointing. I think that these systems are affordable and are cost savings in the long run, if not in the short run. And it's really important that when we implement these digital systems, it's understood that because you've placed safety into the hands of every single person on site, uploading an incident, taking a photograph, reporting an unsafe practice at the moment that it's happening is, I think, incredibly powerful. That evidence cannot be deleted, it cannot be edited, it has to be investigated, and it's elevated immediately to the people that need to see that kind of information immediately. So I think that there is power behind this, and it's disappointing to hear that operational pressures prevent systems from going in. These are cost-saving exercises, and that should never be an excuse.
Thank you, Ingrid. Okay, so there's a question from Peter, the mining industry regarding the Stilfontein disaster. Why does the mining industry not seal closed mining shafts forever to prevent illegal, small-scale, and violent criminal mining operations? Dushen, I'm not sure if you can answer that.
Yeah, that's another, I can call it a task team at the Minerals Council that's handling that issue, which is, and they are very proactive on the illegal mining, in the illegal mining areas. There's a lot of work being done in that through our leadership forums, through our committees. I can't really speak too much on that. I'm not really, attuned to all of that information, as that's not part of my portfolio. So I'll save that one for my colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, great. And Ingrid, maybe for you, I think there were a few questions where it related to the digital health and safety compliance protocols, but there was a question, for example, if DAL goes through to a site, would they require the manual documents, printed documents, or can they then review and audit the digital format?
We've actually had both. We've actually had them request printed documents, but that's easy. It just find the document, print it. What next? What next document do you want? We can also email them the documents to them, so it depends on how they want to see those. They don't have to have an 8-second license. They will sit within the room, and those documents will be actually downloaded from 8-second line there in real time, and either emailed or printed as they prefer.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm going to ask the panel to provide their closing remarks. Please keep it as succinct as possible. So we can start with you, Dr. Jessica Hutchings.
Thanks, Sanjay. And I think, short and sweet is there's lots of work that we still need to do in the space of health and safety. But I think through the various panelists' advice and recommendations, there's a need for us as a collective to really come together in terms of how do we improve health and safety? How do we learn from, the mining has always been seen to be as the best practice, and Dushen has shared some, very valuable lessons that can be applied in small to large companies. So I think for me, it's about if you are a safety professional online, is don't stop doing what you're doing. You are doing a great job. We just need, more systems in place to give them the necessary support. So that's from my side.
Thank you, Jessica. We'll move to you, Ingrid.
So just from my side, people are always concerned about how long digitization takes. It doesn't take that long. Just get started. One foot in front of the other is the way to eat the apple. And I'll give you an example quickly. We implemented 8 big mines with contractor onboarding in 3 months. So you can do this too. We haven't resolved everything. There's still a lot of issues out there, but I think we've resolved the big 85% of all issues, and there's some exciting things to come. I saw a question in the Q&A about collecting data from externally. Yes, we can do better on integration with IoT devices and collecting real-time data into our systems. And I think this is one of the trends that are coming. There's exciting things happening in AI, which makes processes a lot more easy and takes out the mundane tasks of, extracting metadata from PDFs and actually autofilling into fields and locations. There are some drawbacks to HR, very concerning, and maybe that's a topic for another time in terms of who's held accountable when AI gets it wrong. So we need to take all these things into account. But the digital war is on its way, and you need to get involved. You need to start transforming your company. Don't be afraid. Once you do it, you will never look back. just like all those bank branches started closing down, you too will never have to enter another bank branch. You'll do it all from the comfort of your office. So get involved, and if you need help, give us a call. We're here to help you on your journey.
Great, thank you, Ingrid. We'll then move to Daniel.
Thanks, Sanjay, and thanks everyone for attending. I really enjoyed the session. I think a big part of it is cooperation between and understanding between different industries and different companies within particular industries. I think health and safety or compliance has a long way to go. I've seen massive improvements since I started doing this, 15 years ago. Things are definitely improving, but we're still very young in South Africa in our sort of health and safety journey. And I think there's a lot of improvements to be made. And I think digital tools and technology can help us a lot. We're seeing it already. Some of the questions I saw that I actually answered some. We're seeing it in the draft construction regs where they actually they specifically state that you can accept a digital file, a digital safety file. So you can accept digital safety file or a manual one. So it's good to see that those sort of changes are happening. Instead of fighting against the tide as AI and digitization, all that is coming, rather get involved and join the ride. And I promise it'll make everyone's life easier. But I think, and leadership is a big one. Leaders need to identify this and take their companies further and improve on safety.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daniel. From your side, Dushendra.
Thank you, Sanjay. Just in closing, I want to say thank you very much for the time. And essentially, I believe that zero harm is possible. I think we really can sustain those efforts that we're making to get there. And I think it's certainly achievable through some of the evidence we've seen through, the performance of specific mines that have achieved that over long periods, the fatality-free shifts. There's a lot of initiatives that we're driving at the moment, and I think the collaborative stakeholder engagements are really key. As Minerals Council, we are really policy. One of our core mandates is policy advocacy, and we work closely with the Mine Health and Safety Council through tripartism, ensuring that the unions, us as employers, and the department are all aligned to reaching that goal of zero harm. And I think there's a lot. We've got people, experts within the different structures, the advisory committees, who have an impact on the regulations together with employer experts. So there's a multifaceted approach to this. And I think with technology, leveraging on AI and all of the data analytics platforms that's coming to the fore, there's a lot that we can do to actually mitigate incidents. I think also, aside from technology, a key thing is really the humanistic aspect and humane-centered leadership. We need psychologically safe spaces for our personnel. And I think that is key to also getting there, ensuring that people's mental health are first, placed at the fore. That's a primary focus, so that we can also assist and assist in reducing these incidents in our mining industry. Thank you very much, Sanjay, and thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dushendra. And from my side, thank you to the panel. You've been fantastic, and to the audience online as well. So from my closing remarks, just to say thank you from a collaborative perspective. I think there's a lot more work and a lot more engagement that we need to implement, right? So I think that's going to be the best way in terms of getting through the advocacy sessions, the training that's much needed within the economy. We have a world-class, legislation and regulations, etc. But it's merely a case of complying and implementing those. But looking forward to engaging further, walking this journey with everybody as well. Thank you once again to Creamer Media for hosting this very valuable webinar. And I'll now hand over to Shannon. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sanjay. That brings us to the end of our webinar. I'd like to say thank you to Sanjay Munnoo for enabling an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. And thank you also to our panelists, Jessica Hutchings from Rand Mutual Assurance, Ingrid Osborne from Saryx Engineering Group, Daniel Weber from Saryx Engineering, and Dushen Naidoo from the Minerals Council South Africa. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Rand Mutual Assurance, Saryx Engineering Group, and AlcoSafe for their support in making this webinar possible. And finally, thank you to the attendees for taking the time to join us for this discussion on health and safety in South Africa's industrial sectors. We value your participation in our events. Our next webinar takes place on the 30th of July at 2 p.m. and will focus on renewable energy, where a panel will unpack how South Africa's renewable energy landscape is changing. The link to register for that event has been shared in the chat. The recording of today's webinar will be sent to you in due course, and if you have any additional questions, please be in touch. You can reach us at shannon@creamermedia.co.za. Thank you everyone for your time, and goodbye.